As the surge of vampires became uncontrollable in Japan in the early 1900s, Lieutenant General Nakajima established a covert military unit known as Code Zero. The unit is unique in its approach. Rather than solely relying on humans to fight vampires, it enlists vampires themselves. The vampires within this unit are called the Congo Iron Soldiers. One day in 1923, Nakajima's right-hand man, Lieutenant Colonel Maida Yoshinobu, arrives in Tokyo, welcomed by Moriyama, an officer from Code Zero. Maida thought he was supposed to be headed immediately for their headquarters, but to his surprise, Moriyama had been ordered to take him to Tsukishima, a facility where they're keeping a vampire named Misaki. The facility is located deep underground, so that it can be easily submerged in water in case there's an accident. Misaki used to be a renowned theatre actress until a stage accident afflicted her 6 days ago. Despite receiving a fatal blow, her wounds magically healed within just 4 hours. Although she survived, she has yet to recover mentally, and for the moment, she can only have a little bit of conversation from time to time. After a long walk down countless stairs, accompanied by Moriyama's small talk, Maida arrives at Misaki's room. She's sitting with her head down and no movement in sight. To trigger her to talk, Moriyama gives her a script of the play Salome, in which Misaki used to act as its protagonist. Upon receiving it, she starts acting out of the blue, surprising the two men in the room. She recites her lines so flawlessly as if she's on the stage. Maida can only watch in both awe and bewilderment. At the same time, he tries to write down her remarks, keeping track of anything useful. He also notices the holy mark on her tongue. The holy mark itself acts as a tag that shows where a vampire got infected. In the middle of Misaki's performance, Moriyama suddenly gets a call from Nakajima, ordering Maida to meet him. He and Maida then prepare to leave. Interestingly, even though Misaki is being left alone, she still doesn't stop with her performance. Later on, Maida arrives at Nakajima's office. He reports what he's seen so far in Tsukishima. Since Misaki couldn't even communicate properly, Maida thinks that the possibility of training her to be a member of Zero is extremely low, meaning they'll have to get rid of her. Nakajima also informs Maida that the one who infected Misaki was likely an S-level vampire who had been alive since ancient times. This vampire is also suspected of murdering 2 other humans. It's Maida's responsibility to deal with them. Later on, after gathering Code Zero and ordering them to track down the said vampire, Maida and Moriyama head to Misaki's confinement room once more. Again, Misaki welcomes them with her drama performance without uttering a single word other than those written on the script. Same words, same gestures, and same emotions. And again, Maida writes down all her remarks despite not getting anything useful. But then, unexpectedly, Misaki stops for a few seconds to praise Maida's handwriting, calling it lovely. Maida is left speechless. He's then interrupted by Moriyama asking him to sign some paperwork. Misaki keeps watching intensely as he affixes his signature. As soon as he's done, Maida tells Moriyama that he's going somewhere else, and when he looks back as he's about to leave, Misaki is already back with her performance. A few moments later, Maida arrives at a theatre, which is Misaki's former workplace, and also the place where she got badly injured. He goes straight for the stage. Misaki's blood is still there. Then out of nowhere, a mysterious boy approaches him. Apparently he's a foreign actor named Defrot, who acted as John in the play Salome. He informs Maida that a big property fell on Misaki in the middle of her late-night practice, almost crushing her to death. But having already learned all that stuff, Maida ignores Defrot and walks away nonchalantly. Outside, as he's taking a closer look at the poster of the play, he catches sight of a woman who resembles Misaki a lot. But she's actually Shirasa Aoi, a local news reporter for a company called Capital News, and also Misaki's fan. Aoi excitedly introduces herself to Maida and asks him to tell her any kind of information he knows. But Maida once again walks away. Coincidentally, that's when Moriyama hurriedly approaches him to inform him that Misaki has escaped. At dusk, Code Zero is deployed to Tsukishima to face Misaki. They guard the entrance to Misaki's confinement facility. After waiting for a while, the door bursts open. Misaki comes out as she recites the lines she's always been reciting. Suddenly she gets shot in the chest, and black poisoned blood flows from her body. Still, she's not bothered by it. With the help of her teleportation ability that she gained from becoming a vampire, she proceeds to attack the officers one by one. The surviving officers try to shoot her, but she easily repels the bullets, stopping them with her mind. Later on, Maida and Moriyama arrive at the scene. Maida orders Moriyama to limit the search area while he moves by himself. After walking around the city for a whole night, both Misaki and Maida meet each other in front of the Tokyo station. The dawn has arrived and the sun has risen, meaning Misaki must take cover before she gets killed by the daylight. But she doesn't care about that. Instead, she approaches Maida, seducing him to kiss her. As soon as she opens her mouth and reveals her vampire teeth, Maida swiftly reaches for his sword. But then all of a sudden, as if possessed by a different person, Misaki gently touches his hand. She then embraces him, introduces herself in a soft voice, and expresses her long desire to meet him. After that, she teleports herself to a sunlit spot, practically committing suicide. She smiles at Maida before completely combusting, leaving no trace of herself. On the spot where she dies, a large holy mark is formed. Sometime later, Maida reports what happened with Misaki to Nakajima. The latter then declares Maida the team leader of Code Zero. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Aoi is persuading her chief editor to let her do the article on Misaki's mysterious combustion. Aoi herself doesn't know that it's Misaki who died. Nevertheless, she believes that it's a newsworthy incident, but her boss doesn't really agree with that since their target audience is young girls. Instead, he tasks Aoi with the investigation of the elopement case of Misaki. Apparently, for some reason, they believe that Misaki has eloped, not died. So the next thing Aoi does is visit the theatre again. Defrot is still there, approaching visitors as he always does. After learning about Aoi's job, Defrot scoffs. In Aoi's defense, though, she truly wants to learn about real events, such as the human combustion incident and Misaki's elopement. She also adds that she wants to look for her childhood friend, Kurusu Shutaro, who went to Siberia and never came back. Little does she know that Kurusu has become a vampire and is currently working under Code Zero. Not only that, but he's also an A-rank vampire, which means he's the highest ranked vampire the country has so far. However, he's still having a hard time accepting the fact that he's now a vampire. Therefore, his teammates Takeuchi and Yamagami Tokuichi try to help him. Yamagami teaches him how to drink blood, while the experiment freak Takeuchi shows that vampires are immortal as long as they keep drinking blood by shooting down Yamagami as an example. As the three of them spend their time messing around, Suwa, another Congo Iron soldier, comes to inform them that Maida wants to meet them. Later on, Maida introduces himself as the new captain of Zero in front of the 4 Congo Iron soldiers. Maida turns to Kurusu, asking him to do his best in battles since he's supposed to be the country's strongest vampire. Takeuchi then explains to Kurusu that most humans can die of poisoning if vampires' body fluids get into their bodies. However, a small portion of them can survive and turn into vampires instead, and that small portion includes them. After that, Maida states Zero's next mission, which is to investigate around the 8 places where human combustion cases have occurred this month in the hope of recruiting or obliterating more dangerous vampires. But Kurusu has a question. If humans can die of poisoning after being bitten by vampires, why can't their bodies be found? Well, Takeuchi has a good answer to it. He introduces them to a shop called Tenmanya, which is named after its owner, Tenmanya Shinosuke. So later, Maida, Kurusu, and Yamagami pay a visit to that store. Upon meeting the owner, Maida tries to cut to the chase and asks him how the vampires around the area get their blood for consumption. It turns out that Tenmaya itself is a place for a blood trading business. The shop once monopolized the industry, but lately new competitors have emerged. Tenmanya asks for Zero's favor to destroy them. To Maida, he gives away a vial of the product that's sold by his competitors. The next day, Maida orders his Code Zero subordinates to search around the town to find clues in the broad daylight. In his free time, he visits the front of the Tokyo station, where Misaki died. Coincidentally, Aoi happens to be in the same area. She greets Maida, thinking that he's doing an investigation on the human combustion case. But upon seeing Maida putting flowers beside the holy mark, she assumes that he was the lover of the victim. Even after Maida denies it, Aoi can't believe otherwise because the language of those flowers matches with the messages of lovers. At night, Maida and his team are prepared to entrap the remaining vampires in the city based on the clues they've gathered. Apparently, the team found an empty vial of Tenmaya's competitor's product in the garbage, and they managed to locate the House of the Vampires after tracing back where the vial came from. The team has also evacuated the whole neighborhood where the suspected vampires live, so it's time for Zero's vampires to do their part. Suwa's job is to ambush the vampires in their house. Well, it turns out to be harder than he thought. However, at least he finds out that their targets are a couple. Eventually, the couple manage to escape. They stop to hide under a bridge for a while to discuss their next move before running away again, crossing the bridge. Little do they know that Takeuchi, Kurusu, and Yamagami are already waiting at the end of the bridge. The boyfriend is about to confront them head-on, but the girlfriend stops him. Somehow, she can sense how dangerous Kurusu is. Then suddenly the rest of Zero arrives to ambush them from behind, leaving them no way to escape. Kurusu tries to persuade them to surrender in exchange for free blood and official registered residence, but the boyfriend refuses. Instead, he runs toward the soldiers, As a result, he gets shot. Despite that, he's not slowed down even for a second. Kurusu quickly teleports in front of him before he can hurt the soldiers. Then Suwa appears, piercing him with a knife. In an instant, he falls down, and within a few seconds, he dies. Her girlfriend approaches his dead body to say her last messages to him. Everyone witnesses this emotional moment in silence, but they're unaware that she's trying to use this chance to attack back. Without a word of warning, she teleports in front of Moriyama and ferociously bites the young guy. She flies away, passing everyone with ease in her escape attempt. However, Maida suddenly arrives. He walks slowly but surely toward her, and when she dashes to attack him, he effortlessly stops and slashes her to death. Now the couple is gone, both the boyfriend and girlfriend. Maida then rushes to Moriyama, who's fighting for his life after getting bitten. Unfortunately, it seems like he can't make it. Therefore, Maida stabs his chest, ending Moriyama's suffering once and for all. A few days later, Zero manages to capture a man whom they thought was a vampire, but turns out to be a human. Nevertheless, that man is still involved in the blood trading business. He works as Tenmanya's competitor's delivery man, although he seems to know nothing about the blood. At the time of his arrest, he also hadn't been informed of the location of his delivery. The team also managed to confiscate a vial of blood from him, which was confirmed to match with the blood given by Tenmanya. While Takuchi is talking with Kurusu and Yamagami in Tenmanya's shop, he gets asked several questions by his teammates out of curiosity. That's when he reveals that his main job is actually to develop pharmaceuticals while working for Zero is his part-time job. When he was a human, he was entrusted to investigate the vampire's blood, but an accident happened, which led the blood to infect his left eye, causing him to become a vampire. That's why he always wears a monocle to hide his holy mark. Takeuchi also reveals that Suwa is the oldest vampire among them. According to the record, Suwa has been alive since before the Edo period. While they're still at it, Takeuchi warns Yamagami not to show up in front of his acquaintances because his family has been notified that he's dead. Later that night, Suwa, Kurusu, and Yamagami observe the city center. Suwa separates himself from the others and stands by the theater. As soon as he walks away, Defrot passes by him, walking toward Aoi. Suwa questions why a monster like Defrot is here. Defrot also seems to recognize Suwa, but they both act like they don't know each other. Meanwhile, Kurusu and Yamagami are observing the people at the night market. Yamagami feels a little bit melancholic, remembering that he used to come here with his wife, Tomiko. It's possible that she's also there at the moment, but even if that's the case, there's no way Yamagami can meet her. Later, back in Zero's headquarters, Suwa reports that he's just seen a vampire child, referring to Defrot. He describes Defrot as a high-class vampire, possibly even higher than Kurusu. When the day comes, Maida and Nakajima attend the senior-level army conference. Since Maida's rank is the lowest among the others, he doesn't have the courage to say a word. He can only watch Nakajima being bombarded with critiques by the other officers. They deem Nakajima's Congo Iron Soldier plan a failure because he's only managed to recruit 4 vampires since the project was put in motion 20 years ago. In Nakajima's defense, there's an A-rank vampire among them. However, the other officers are still not satisfied, no matter how much Nakajima convinces them. As long as the unit doesn't beat the British vampire troop in terms of number and strength, it's still not enough for them. Maida continues to work until night again, having to listen to the talk of his seniors without uttering a word. During his smoke break, Nakajima talks to him privately. According to Nakajima's belief, what he's doing isn't wrong despite what the others said. As someone who's personally witnessed the cruelty of war, he doesn't want to see more of his colleagues die. That's why he never stops striving for the Congo Iron Soldier project. And he especially puts great hope in Kurusu. Maida himself swears that he's willing to sacrifice himself for the completion of the Congo Iron Soldier plan. Meanwhile, as Yamagami talks to Takeuchi about their work, Kurusu suddenly interferes. He eagerly claims that he knows a way to allow Yamagami to meet his wife. Therefore, they go to the night market again. Kurusu states that his plan will work once they use their vampire power. Coincidentally, upon their arrival, Kurusu sees 2 little children looking at them curiously. He uses this chance to bring Yamagami to teleport with him to a building's rooftop. Naturally, the kids get scared. They run crying to their mother. Apparently, Kurusu deliberately did that so they could be seen as ghosts. All of a sudden, Yamagami spots Tomiko in the crowd. She came bringing a lantern for the festival, just like they had expected. They follow her to a riverbank. Kurusu convinces Yamagami to trust his plan. So as Tomiko is about to release her lantern, Yamagami teleports in front of her. Tomiko isn't scared, not even a little bit. Instead, she smiles, believing that Yamagami has come to her from eternity. She expresses how much she yearns for him, and Yamagami returns it back, saying that he feels the same way. They proceed to talk earnestly to each other. Before they part ways, Tomiko hopes that she'll meet Yamagami again like this someday. Yamagami promises, He then teleports back to Kurusu. Although slightly hesitant, Yamagami asks Kurusu to help him do this again next year. Because after all, it's the moment he's always waited for. And he doesn't regret seeing Tomiko again. A few days later, Kurusu is seen having a one-on-one sword training with Maida. At first, he holds back since he's afraid of hurting Maida. But even after giving his best effort, Maida is still ahead of him, proving that Kurusu isn't ready yet. Suddenly, in the middle of their training, an officer interrupts to inform Maida that a suspicious dead body has been found in the Yoshiwara area. It turns out that the victim was a geisha. She was employed by a famous geisha house called Choyaru. There's a clear bite mark on her neck, indicating that it was indeed a vampire's doing. After seeing her for himself, Maida commands the team to search the area and send Code Zero in tonight. Meanwhile, AOI, who's found out about the murder, protests to her boss upon finding out that her article on that case is nowhere to be found in the newspaper. In response to that, her boss exposes the army for forbidding the article to be published. So instead, he tells Aoi to cover the promotion of an exclusive English perfume shop at the Imperial Hotel. Later that day in the late afternoon, Nakajima has a private discussion with Secretary Okimura. The latter reports that starting next year, the budget for Code Zero will be cut in half. So if the unit can't produce some exceptional results by the end of the year, it will be disbanded. At night, Maida and Code Zero visit Yoshiwara to infiltrate the area. Yamagami is in charge of detecting vampires. The fact that he's an unranked vampire means that he has an instinctive fear of those who are stronger than him, making him able to sense them easily. The others do their own search in their own way. Before dispersing, Takeuchi tells Kurusu to use ultrasonic wave communication, or basically telepathy, in case there's an emergency. A few moments later, Suwa is seen in a room in Choyaru. A prostitute enters the room and introduces herself as Akisato. She invites Suwa to do activities like singing or playing a game, but Suwa refuses. Instead, he lays his head on Akisato's lap, telling her to take it easy. They both proceed to have a warm conversation. Surprisingly, Akisato can guess that Suwa's a vampire. It also turns out that she's only 15. That's Suwa's age when his blood got sucked by many vampires about 300 years ago. Akisato gives Suwa her hairpin as a keepsake. She then takes off Suwa's mask without a word of warning, taking him by surprise. Suwa demands that she give it back, but by the time he takes the mask from her, she's already sleeping. As Suwa is about to enjoy his solitude again, Kurusu contacts him via telepathy, saying that Yamagami found a vampire. Well, as it turns out, they let the said vampire slip out of their hands. It happened because that vampire ran away as soon as they sensed Kurusu, so they went back to their headquarters only for Maida to scold them. To solve this problem, he commands Yamagami to go alone next time. Maida also informs them of 2 new victims in Yoshiwara, but the thing is, the teeth marks on the deceased are not the same size, meaning they're dealing with multiple vampires in the area. Meanwhile, Aoi goes to the Imperial Hotel, as instructed by her chief editor. Interestingly, upon arriving at the hotel, she sees a British man offering a product to Okimura. The man turns out to be Rufus Glenn, a salesman for the perfume company Aoi is supposed to promote. Rufus gives Aoi a bottle of the perfume he sells. However, unbeknownst to Aoi, it's not actually perfume, it's blood. Specifically, the kind that's sold by Tenmanya and his supposed competitors. The next day, more and more bodies are found in the east area of Tokyo. Interestingly enough, none of the bite marks on their bodies are consistent with the previous cases. So far, there are 6 cases in Yoshiwara alone. This leads Yamagami and Maida to assume that the vampires are using Yoshiwara as their base camp. Yamagami himself has no choice but to search for them by himself. As he walks around the area, he notices a prostitute wobbling barefoot in a weird way. He proceeds to look around and finds more people behaving the same way. In a few moments, he realizes that they're all vampire. Yamagami tries to inform the others via telepathy, but too bad he's not skilled enough to use that ability. As he keeps trying, he manages to kill so many of them, yet they keep coming. At some point, he can't keep up any longer. He's cornered at a temple, and the vampires are so close to sucking his blood dry. That's when Kurusu senses that Yamagami is in danger. He teleports to Yamagami and mercilessly slashes all the vampires dead just right in time. If he had been a second late, Yamagami would probably be dead by now. Elsewhere, Aoi is talking to Defrot, venting about seeing Rufus, whom she deems rude. She also gives Defrot the blood he got from Rufus for the reason that she doesn't like the smell. Later on, Defrot confronts Rufus, asking the latter to keep the promise of not hunting him in Tokyo. Meanwhile, Suwa is walking around Yoshiwara to find Akisato since he couldn't find her in her geisha house. Suddenly, he notices a vampire chewing on a girl. After a closer look, the girl turns out to be Akisato. Suwa approaches the dying Akisato and gives back her hairpin. Her last request is for Suwa to sing for her, but unfortunately, Suwa really doesn't know any songs. She then closes her eyes forever without anyone singing a song for her. A few moments later, the whole team gathers at the temple. Takeuchi finds a bunch of blood inserted into a barrel of alcohol, which seems like it's smuggled from England. Maida commands them to let the elite unit follow up on it, but then he suddenly collapses out of exhaustion due to being overworked. The next day, while he's still unconscious, Okimura makes a sudden announcement that the 16th Special Agent Team is going to be disbanded, and Nakajima has until the end of August to destroy all the case files pertaining to the Congo Iron Soldier Troop. That's because the Imperial Army is bringing new technologies and a new unit from Britain that is superior to the current Code Zero. For someone who's hearing bad news, Nakajima is surprisingly calm, as if he already knew this was going to happen. Later that day, Maeda wakes up. The first person he sees in his hospital room is Aoi, whom he mistakes for Misaki at first. As soon as he realizes who she actually is, he demands an explanation of why she's there. Aoi then immediately begs him to tell the truth about the human combustion incident in front of Tokyo Station. Of course, Maida can't do that since it's a confidential matter. Nevertheless, Aoi shows Maida a bundle of letters addressed to him that she picked up beside his case files. She uses it to threaten him, but in the end she agrees to get out because Maida scares him. But before leaving, she tells Maida that she's not giving up and will come back again later. Once Aoi is gone, Maida opens the letters. Who would expect that they're from Misaki? The first one was seemingly written when she was still a human. It contains her concern about her father and a request that Maida stop him. Then comes the second letter. It's all written in blood and says, "Yoshinobu, sir, Misaki will always admire you." Apparently, it was written by Misaki during her confinement, when she had already become a vampire. The next thing we know, Maida is reported to have disappeared from the hospital. Somewhere else, a group of British high-class vampires is gathering at a secret warehouse located somewhere in Yokohama. For some reason, they're waiting for Okimura to arrive. One of them orders Rufus, who works as their server due to his low rank, to clean her room after she devoured a man there. Rufus obeys. He tows the dead man and throws him into a shed full of other victims of the vampires, but then he makes some ominous remarks, saying that he'll give all of them something called the Askra. In the meantime, the Congo Iron Soldiers have also arrived in Yokohama after managing to track down the barrel delivery location, which is the exact same warehouse where the British vampires are throwing a party. Takeuchi and Yamagami stay outside to keep an eye on the area, while Suwa and Kurusu sneak inside. However, to their surprise, the S-class British vampires are all dead. Suwa just assumes that they fought each other to death. All of a sudden, Takeuchi contacts them from outside. He's facing a large number of feral, low-level vampires and has a hard time fighting them off. No matter how many vampires he manages to kill, they keep coming with no end. Takeuchi's machine gun even gets overheated to the point that it can't be used anymore. But thankfully, Suwa and Kurusu come just right in time to their rescue. Takeuchi then fires a signal to the team at the perimeter. They then head for the city, trying their best to kill the large wave of vampires. But suddenly, a mysterious train arrives. Whatever is happening, it makes the four soldiers feel uneasy. From the train, there appear numerous caskets, and from each casket, a vampire soldier comes out. All of them then march to wipe out the low-rank vampires. Yamagami, who's watching it unfold from afar with the three other vampires, realizes that the Congo Iron Soldiers have arrived. This makes his three colleagues question things. As far as the rest of them know, the four of them are the only Congo Iron Soldiers. But Yamagami has an explanation. According to him, upon the establishment of Code Zero, the name Code Zero itself was synonymous with the Congo Iron Soldiers. However, Nakajima's ambition led him to come up with a plan for an elite force consisting of immortal vampires. The project might have been going underway in secret, so that's why they're not notified about it. However, even if that's the case, Yamagami can't comprehend why the force wasn't sent to fight earlier. This makes him sure that Maida isn't behind this, since he would have deployed the Congo Iron Soldiers more efficiently. To quench their curiosity, the group decides to split up. Suwa and Takeuchi are going to track the troops, while Kurusu and Yamagami are going to meet up with Maida to confirm the truth. Meanwhile, Okimura comes to Nakajima's office in a panic. He's furious at Nakajima for causing the riot in Yokohama, and most importantly, for obliterating the British S-class vampires they were going to recruit. In response to that, Nakajima calmly says that he did that to prove that the Congo Iron Soldiers are superior to even S-class vampires. As Okimura is about to say another word of rebuttal, Nakajima turns back and casually shoots him with no hesitation. The next day, Suwa and Takeuchi manage to secretly infiltrate the place where Nakajima stores his soldiers. The fact that Nakajima is there is enough for them to prove that he's behind all of this. On the other hand, Yamagami and Kurusu also successfully meet with Maida in their headquarters after walking through a long and smelly sewer in order to avoid the sun. The first thing they do is make sure Maida has recovered. Then they report the chaos that happened in Yokohama, including the part where Nakajima's troops arrived and finished off the feral vampires. Coincidentally, Nakajima also happens to arrive at their headquarters. A few moments later, the three of them decide to confront Nakajima in person. Yamagami tries to dig things up from him discreetly, asking whether the Congo Iron Soldier plan has already been completed. But Nakajima gives an ambiguous answer. Impatient, Kurusu just straightforwardly inquires who those vampires are and where they're from. But instead of answering the questions, Nakajima asks Kurusu back. He tries to test how much Kurusu knows about the Congo Iron Soldier plan. Kurusu responds honestly. Nakajima then starts his explanation regarding the force he's creating. The Congo Iron Soldier project was originally established to compete with the British Vampire Intelligence Unit. However, Nakajima has his own ambition that stems from his despair. He's lost so many comrades on the battlefield, so he doesn't want to experience that ever again. In order to protect the soldiers from death, he turned them into vampires. He thought that recruiting vampires by looking for them in the towns like what they had always done was too old-fashioned and took too much time. Therefore, he manufactured them, quite literally, using Askra, which is an artificial blood source that has the ability to turn humans into vampires, successfully. Nakajima gave Askra to his subordinates, who were none other than the members of Code Zero except for Maida. Now that Maida is the only one left, Nakajima offers the Askra to him. Yamagami tries to stop Maida from taking it. However, Maida has sworn to give his life to Nakajima ever since his life got saved on the battlefield, so he'll do anything Nakajima tells him to do. Nakajima thanks Maida for that. But there's one thing Maida still needs to say to him, and it's regarding Misaki's wish to stop him. Still, Nakajima doesn't take it seriously, and persuades Maida to drink the Askra. As Maida is about to grab the Askra, Yamagami rushes to restrain him. Kurusu also acts fast. Yamagami then tries to talk Nakajima out of it, but in Nakajima's defense, that's the best thing he can do. Otherwise, the old won't stop sacrificing the young in order to save the country. He does all of this so that young people can have a brighter future. After explaining that, he excuses himself from the room. Yamagami is about to run to stop him, but unexpectedly Maida stabs him from behind. He proceeds to threaten Kurusu as well if he's trying to do anything. Yamagami doesn't give up. Although he's in a weak state, he tries to talk some sense into Maida, calling Nakajima's idea unrealistic and ironic. All of a sudden, a big earthquake occurs just a few minutes before 12 p.m. Yamagami tells Maida to run away. However, Maida is too stunned to do anything. Ultimately, he and Yamagami get entrapped under the rubble. Thankfully, Yamagami manages to free himself. His vampire power allows him to heal himself in a matter of seconds. But Maida isn't a vampire. He's badly hurt, and there's nothing he can do. Yamagami decides to help Maida ease the pain by removing the rocks that are weighing him. However, the more rocks he removes, the more they reveal the sunlight. Still, Yamagami doesn't care. He keeps clearing the rubble until the place becomes brighter and brighter. Finally, there's only one beam left for Yamagami to remove. It's also the biggest rock that's crushing Maida. Removing it means that Yamagami needs to walk out in the open in order to take it out completely. Maida screams, ordering Yamagami to stop, yet Yamagami doesn't heed it. As he keeps walking toward the sunlight, he gives his last message to Maida. He only wants Maida to take care of Kurusu. Eventually, the beam is removed, and Yamagami is burned to ashes under the sun. Now from this point, the story's point of view shifts to Misaki's. 1 year ago, she arrived in Tokyo during winter. Her hair was still long back then, making her resemble Aoi a lot. She had planned to live in the attic of the Imperial Theatre. Surprisingly, upon arriving at the place, she heard the voice of a boy telling her to leave because this was his place. That boy turned out to be none other than Defrot. Funnily enough, instead of taking Defrot's order seriously, Misaki got worried about him since he looked so skinny. This made Defrot annoyed. He just picked up his cape and walked out for his practice. Curious, Misaki decided to watch his rehearsal. Needless to say, she was in awe at how talented he was. After that performance, Misaki properly introduced herself to Defrot in the hope of becoming friends with him. However, he just ignored Misaki. The two of them eventually lived together in that attic since no one agreed to leave. Later, in front of the Tokyo station, Aoi saw Kurusu off before he departed for Siberia. Kurusu decided to be a soldier because he didn't want to keep staying at Aoi's house. Apparently, Kurusu had lost his clothing shop, forcing him to live at Aoi's family's home. Actually, Aoi's family didn't mind about it, considering their son, aka Aoi's brother, had died. That's why they had been taking care of Kurusu like their own son. But still, Kurusu felt like a burden by staying there, so he signed up for the military. Before Kurusu and Aoi parted ways, Aoi made him promise not to die. Kurusu did so, and until now, she still believes that Kurusu is still alive despite having received Kurusu's death notice. Meanwhile, in the background, Misaki was sending a letter to Maida. When Misaki got back to the theater, she gave Defrot a piece of Siberia cake. But of course, Defrot refused. He couldn't consume anything but blood because he was a vampire, and this was a fact that was unknown to Misaki. But since Misaki kept insisting, he just promised to eat it later. At that time, Defrot was studying Romeo and Juliet. He was going to play the role of Romeo. However, they haven't found the right person to play Juliet. Misaki herself expressed her wish to play Salome. She tried to enact a scene from the play passionately in front of Defrot, but Defrot critiqued her harshly, calling her acting terrible. According to him, she portrayed Salome as a pretentious princess, which shouldn't be the case. He proceeded to act it out in front of her, showing what it was to be Salome. It goes without saying that Misaki was astonished. Defrot also pointed out the biggest mistake in her performance, which was acting while showing that she already knew the ending of the story. This would only cause her to look too stodgy. In the story, Salome believed that her love was pure, oblivious to the fact that it was bound to be cursed. That's how Misaki was supposed to act. Although Defrot's criticism was brutal and blunt, he still showed good intentions by encouraging Misaki to try again and helping her act better. A few months later, when the weather had become warmer, Misaki got back to the theater after going somewhere else. Okimura had been waiting for her at the theater entrance. They greeted each other in a cordial way. Misaki also thanked Okimura for helping her get the job as an actress. Sadly, her father, Lieutenant General Nakajima, couldn't watch her performance due to his business. After the small talk was over, Misaki entered the attic, and once again she offered Defrot a piece of Siberian cake. As expected, he refused. Defrot proceeded to ask where Misaki had been. Apparently, Misaki just got back from her home. Actually, Misaki could just commute daily from her house because it wasn't that far from the theater. But according to her, her house is scary. Moreover, there was no one who lived there except her father, who only came home once in a while. That's why she chose to stay in the theater's attic instead. Misaki also revealed that he had been exchanging letters with Maida, who turned out to be her fiancé. Interestingly enough, the couple had never met face to face. They only knew each other because Nakajima introduced Maida to Misaki. Regardless of that, Misaki always blushed whenever she thought about Maida, as if she knew that their love was pure. Sometime later, Misaki finally made her debut in Salome, just like what she had wished for. At this point, she already had her hair cut. She came back to her house after the opening day to clean up the house, considering she'd be busier in the theater thereafter. Coincidentally, Nakajima also happened to visit the house. They didn't talk much, except Nakajima just told her that Maida was back. Hearing that was enough to make Misaki blush. She couldn't contain her excitement, so she decided to write a letter to Maida. In the middle of writing, a mysterious man came to see her father. Misaki was too curious to not peek and eavesdrop. The man was covered from head to toe. He told Nakajima that he was bringing the S-Class blood from Yokohama. Not only that, but he also mentioned having to trade with Okimura. Of course, Misaki got terrified. She decided to ask for Maida's help to save her father. The next day, she came back to the theater looking noticeably gloomy. Defrot couldn't help but ask her what was wrong. However, Misaki just said nothing. She proceeded to rehearse as usual, acting like she wasn't bothered by anything. This time, it was Defrot's turn to be captivated by Misaki's mesmerizing performance. She had improved beyond his expectations. But then it happened. The incident. A stage prop came crashing down, slamming into her with force. The audience gasped as blood poured from her broken body. Defrot approached her. Unable to move her body, Misaki could only smile at him as the life seemingly drained out of her right before his eyes. In a half-conscious state, she said that she only wanted Maida to see her playing Salome. Hearing that, Defrot decided to help her so she could achieve that. He lets a drop of his blood enter Misaki's mouth, giving her a second chance to live. And now, at the present time, Defrot appears in front of the dying Maida. He demands Maida to stand up and finish what he started. Then he extends his hand, making the same gesture he made when he was giving blood to Misaki. Meanwhile, Kurusu turns out to have escaped from the rubble a long time ago. He's now walking aimlessly, as his friends are nowhere to be found. Around him are either people who have been infected by vampires or people who lost their houses to the earthquake. Suddenly, Kurusu sees the King Kong Iron soldiers. They've arrived to finish off the feral vampires. Once there are no more vampires around, they continue to march. Kurusu tries to talk to them, introducing himself as someone from the same team. However, the troop completely ignores him. They don't even say a single word. It's as if they're robots programmed to solely kill vampires. A few days later, Kurusu discreetly eavesdrops on the conversation of the people from the Asakusa neighborhood as they're taking shelter at night. Apparently, Tenmanya has gone missing. Also, the army has distributed a new kind of vaccine. They claimed that it could prevent people from turning into vampires. Interestingly, the vaccine in question is packed inside the Askra vial. Somewhere else, Aoi is doing her shift of distributing food to the refugees. To her surprise, her boss also shows up. Aoi thought that the newspaper company had closed down. However, her boss reveals that the company is doing fine. He's even planning to report the vampire incident in Yokohama. Aoi is so excited to hear that news. Unable to wait any longer, she passes the tray of food to the chief editor and runs so that she can do the report as soon as possible. Suddenly, as she's running, she sees a glimpse of Kurusu, but he goes away in a second. Aoi just thinks that it was an illusion. Little did she know that it was indeed Kurusu. He smiles, knowing that Aoi is doing fine. Kurusu keeps wandering and wandering with no clear destination. Days have turned into weeks, yet he's still questioning where he should go. There's nothing he wants to do more than to see his missing friends. One night, he sees the ghost lantern, which reminds him of Tomiko. He then decides to pay her a visit. Thankfully, Tomiko turns out to be fine. When meeting her, Kurusu introduces himself as Yamagami's subordinate. He admits that he's come to check on her. In response, she commends her husband's friends for being courteous. This makes Kurusu question whether anyone else besides him has come. According to Tomiko, about 10 days after the earthquake, a very tall soldier stood at the gate of her house and left after a few moments. That man also left something. A lighter that was used by Yamagami. Kurusu continues walking, lost in thought, when all of a sudden, a voice contacts him through telepathy. It's from a young girl named Ayame, pleading desperately for help. Without hesitation, Kurusu teleports to her location. Upon his arrival, Ayame and 2 other vampire children are trapped, surrounded by the feral vampires. Thankfully, Kurusu arrives just in time to save them. By just ordering the feral vampires to back away through telepathy, he manages to scare them off. Ayame, shaken but safe, reveals a terrible truth. These once human monsters turned into vampires after drinking the government's so-called vaccine. Suddenly, Tenmanya and his shopkeeper show up, calling Kurusu by the name Code Zero Boss. No words can describe how relieved Kurusu feels upon seeing them safe. Tenmanya asks Kurusu and the children to follow him. A few moments later, all of them arrive at an untouched house located on top of the mountain. Apparently, that's where Tenmanya has been hiding the vampires who lost their homes. Tenmanya also asks Kurusu what he knows about the guys covered from head to toe, to which Kurusu responds with everything he knows about them, including the fact that they've been fed with the Askra. However, it doesn't make sense to Tenmanya because, as far as he knows, the Askra is inferior compared to real blood. But after hearing that it was Nakajima's doing, he begins to understand. Afterward, they enter the house, which is filled with vampires who look and act like ordinary humans. A lot of them are women and children. None of those feral vampires are there. Tenmanya shows Kurusu a vial of vaccine for the vampire disease that has been distributed widely. According to the children, they drank it, and subsequently, they felt the thirst for blood. This means that the vaccine is actually Askra all along. Later that night, Tenmanya's shopkeeper asks for Kurusu's favor to accompany him in doing something. He takes Kurusu to a construction site for the subway. On one corner of the site, there are 2 movable large planks. The shopkeeper removes one of them, revealing a storage of blood for the vampire's consumption. Initially, he was afraid that it had been replaced by the vaccine. Thankfully, it seems they haven't. But then, just as they're about to go back, the Congo Iron soldiers manage to infiltrate the site, preparing to kill the shopkeeper. Kurusu attempts to knock some sense into them with words, which of course doesn't work. Fortunately, the shopkeeper is strong enough to repel their attack and defend himself. Suddenly, one of them goes berserk. He starts killing the other red-eyed Congo Iron soldiers around him. Once there's no Congo Iron soldier left beside him, his body starts emitting smoke. Rufus, who has been watching all of that unfold from afar, decides to take action. As soon as Kurusu and the shopkeeper have left, he slashes the dysfunctioning soldier to death. The next day, Kurusu approaches Ayame to ask her if there's any lead to his friends. Ayame herself has only bad news to say. According to her, the one wearing a mask is killing child vampires. He wields some kind of a knife. Ayame adds that he was the one who caused her to run away from her old hiding place near Tsukishima and live in fear. Kurusu knows that Ayame is talking about Suwa, and the next thing we know, he has gone to Tsukishima. From afar, he can already sense Code Zero's presence. He then finds the entrance to the army's underground facility. He enters and attempts to contact Suwa, but there's no answer. After climbing down more stairs, he finally arrives at the place where Misaki was kept. The place has become a complete mess. No one is there. Yet a vinyl player is playing the recording of Misaki's Salome performance. After the audio of the performance ends, the turntable plays another recording. It's the voice of Maida ordering Suwa and Takeuchi to obliterate the enemy vampires, including the artificial vampires, child vampires, and most importantly, Kurusu himself. Right before the recording ends, Maida wishes them good fortune in the upcoming war. This recording triggers Kurusu badly. He shouts, demanding Maida to show himself. He also questions what he did wrong that made him become a target. However, instead of Maida, it's Suwa who's turning up. Kurusu catches him red-handed in front of a dead child vampire. He realizes that what Ayame said was right. He can't just stand still, so he prepares himself to fight Suwa. The two end up engaging in an intense duel. Both of them are very strong and skilled vampires who can teleport within a split second. Blades clashing, knives slicing through the space, yet no bodies to be seen. But that only lasts for a while because a few moments later, Takeuchi arrives at the scene to instantly stop them with his super effective stink bomb. Takeuchi realizes that both Kurusu and Suwa have fallen for the recording trap. Yes, that recording was apparently a trap. The real Maida wouldn't ever wish them good fortune before executing a mission. Eventually, the group makes up and goes away to save themselves from the rising sun. As soon as the three of them teleport, Rufus shows up at the exact spot they were bickering. It turns out that he was the one who set up the trap using his ability to mimic voices. He also went as far as putting a dead child vampire there, but it wasn't enough to divide the original Congo Iron soldiers. As Kurusu, Suwa, and Takeuchi are walking inside the sewer, they ask what happened to each other after the incident in Yokohama and the earthquake. Kurusu tells the other two honestly what he went through. Suwa wonders if Yamagami is dead since Kurusu hasn't seen him. However, one thing is sure for Kurusu, which is that Maida is still alive. He believes that Maida is the tall guy Tomiko was talking about. Takeuchi then asks Kurusu why he came to Tsukishima. Kurusu answers that he tried to confirm that Suwa was really killing child vampires. Surprisingly, Suwa doesn't deny that. When they reach the surface, the sun is already shining so brightly. One step under the sunlight, and they're dead. As they're discussing where to go next, they notice a child vampire taking shelter under the sun. The child looks terribly malnourished. As soon as he sees a rat coming toward him, he tries his best to chase it. His vampire instinct has developed, causing him to crave blood no matter how little it is. But sadly, he's either oblivious or forgets the fact that vampires burn under the sun. Kurusu tries to stop him from running into the sunlight, but it's too late. The boy burns to ashes in his attempt to chase the rat. Witnessing that, Suwa comments that child vampires usually don't live long, and he's saying this based on his 300 years of experience. At night, Takeuchi and Suwa follow Kurusu to Tenmanya's hideout. Initially, Ayame isn't sure about having Suwa around since he has killed child vampires, but eventually she decides to trust him since he's with Kurusu. Takeuchi wonders if Tenmanya has difficulty feeding all of these vampires, to which Tenmanya confirms. However, he has a plan to move them to a secret vampire hideout located in a quarry. The place seems to be the best chance they have since it hasn't been exposed before. But first, he'll send the shopkeeper to do a reconnaissance around the area just to make sure. If everything goes smoothly, they should be able to make their move in winter. Hearing that, Takeuchi tries to give a suggestion regarding the food supply. He claims that his idea should create enough supply for now at least. However, they need to get their hands a little dirty in order to accomplish it. The next thing we know, Kurusu, Suwa, and Ayame head out to execute Takeuchi's plan. Kurusu is in charge of diverting the Congo Iron soldiers' attention, while the other two attempt to retrieve the goods that Takeuchi was talking about. Meanwhile, Defrot arrives at the Imperial Hotel in a dark and gloomy mood. Aoi greets him with worry, afraid the vampires might have harmed him, but Defrot insists he's completely unharmed. Aoi then shares an unexpected discovery: Misaki's old costume. Eagerly, she announces her plan to hold the opera titled L'Orfeo at the hotel, precisely at the place they're currently standing. Aoi also wants Defrot to participate in the play. However, his lack of enthusiasm is obvious. Nevertheless, he agrees after hearing that Aoi just wishes to lift people's spirits. Defrot hints that he too has dreams, ones that might just come to life if he steps onto the stage once more. In the meantime, Nakajima is having a conversation with Rufus in his house. The latter attempts to coax him into erasing all the data of the Code Zero, especially the data regarding the 4 original Congo Iron soldiers, as he thinks that they're just a nuisance way inferior compared to the current troop. However, according to Nakajima, the higher-ups still underestimate the new force. In response to that, Rufus offers to deal with the original Congo Iron Soldiers himself. Nakajima agrees. Elsewhere, Kurusu and Suwa have successfully retrieved Takuchi's secret boxes of stash from underwater. Thankfully, it remains unscathed. Inside the boxes are Takuchi's prototype experiments along with the blueprint of a flying machine. Most importantly, they also contain the source blood for the Congo Iron Soldiers, which is the same one that infected Takuchi's left eye. The blood can't rot or coagulate, but it can explode if exposed to the ultraviolet light of the sun. Moreover, there's a good chance it can make the children age, although the risk is also high. Takeuchi himself wanted to retrieve it in order to do more research on it. Some time has passed after that. The L'Orfeo opening night has finally arrived. Defrot is rehearsing his lines in his room when out of nowhere, Rufus comes to bother him. Not wanting to have any more connection with Rufus, Defrot coldly asks him to leave. With a smirk, Rufus vanishes, teleporting straight to the backstage. There, Aoi is busy ensuring every detail is in place for the show. Rufus appears behind her, making an eerie, unsettling gesture. Needless to say, Defrot's performance is indescribably magnificent. Once the final curtain falls, Defrot retreats backstage, only to discover a strange letter waiting for him. Its origin is seemingly tied to Rufus. Later, he's seen arriving at the military's facility in Tsukishima, still in his costume. He calls out for Rufus at the entrance, demanding that he come out. After not getting any answer for a while, he starts to feel like something is wrong. Abruptly, he vaguely hears the voice of Misaki. He then climbs down the stairs of the facility and finds the record player playing the recording of Misaki's performance. Rufus starts to talk through the speaker, enticing Defrot to enter the door in front of him. Defrot proceeds to move forward, and eventually he finds the unconscious Aoi placed by Rufus under the shining sunlight. The message is clear. To save her, Defrot would have to sacrifice himself. Rufus starts speaking again to threaten Defrot. Then with the switches he has control of, he opens the sections of the roof one by one, leaving only a little bit of space for Defrot to take cover from the sun. Defrot is entrapped. However, he's determined to not waver. As Rufus is about to pull the last switch, Aoi wakes up. She approaches Defrot to make sure he's okay, but Defrot coldly commands her to step back. In the middle of that chaos, a door abruptly creaks open in front of them. Maida, now a vampire, steps through. His eyes burn with red fury, but they lock only on Aoi, mistaking her for Misaki. His vision is completely red. Upon seeing Defrot beside Aoi, he has nothing to think of besides his consuming need to eradicate Defrot and every vampire in his path. Of course, Rufus is elated with what's happening. Unable to contain his excitement, he opens the water flow that will soon drown the three of them. All that's left for him to do is just sit back, watch, and relax. It takes less than a minute for Maida to make his first attack. In the blink of an eye, his sword has pierced through Defrot's stomach. The fact that Defrot is not carrying any weapon now naturally makes him more vulnerable. However, it doesn't stop him from fighting back with all his might. But then, when Defrot is about to stand up after getting beaten to a pulp, he sees Aoi in front of him, protecting him from Maida's sword by letting the sword stab her instead. Defrot is bewildered, wondering why Aoi would go to such lengths to protect him. Aoi turns to Maida, furiously asking why he would attack a child. But again, in Maida's distorted mind, Aoi isn't herself. She's Misaki. Aoi's question seems to shake him. Unable to retaliate due to confusion, he eventually disappears from the scene. Still, the damage he's done to Aoi is already too much. She bleeds so heavily, and as a result, she slowly loses her consciousness. In contrast to that chaos, Kurusu and the others are having fun building Takuchi's flying machine in Tenmanya's house. The children curiously ask Tenmanya a question. Why would a human save vampires? In response to that, Tenmanya says that a vampire once saved him too, so he wants to return that kind of kindness. Once he leaves the room, the shopkeeper begins telling Tenmanya's story from when he was little. Tenmanya is actually half Japanese. He used to often get bullied and discriminated against due to his appearance and identity. Only a few people would be willing to support and hang out with him, including the shopkeeper and another store clerk vampire who called him by the name Shinbo. Tenmanya always felt safe whenever he was with them. One day at dusk, the vampires in the shop heard Tenmanya crying for help. The clerk rushed and found Tenmanya stuck hanging from a branch of a tall tree. Apparently, some children chased him, and the only way he could run from them was by climbing up there. Unfortunately, he couldn't find a way to go down. As soon as the clerk saw Tenmanya about to fall, he didn't hesitate. His loyalty to Tenmanya was so deep that without a second thought, he rushed outside to save him, even though the sun was still shining. The clerk burned to ashes a few seconds after helping Tenmanya. Once the shopkeeper finishes telling the story, Ayame and Suwa engage in small talk. Ayame wonders how Suwa can be so happy to live so long as a vampire. According to Suwa, As long as a vampire's state of mind still retains humanity, it doesn't really matter. Humans aren't like animals that only live to have children and die. Humans keep inventing things to entertain them, such as movies, music, and plays. Those are the kinds of things Suwa keeps looking forward to. Ayame faintly agrees with him. She proceeds to stand up and goes outside. Then, strangely, she uses telepathy to communicate with another unknown vampire. She asks, "I just need to tell you, right?" After a moment of silence, she makes an agreement gesture. A few moments later, back in Tsukushima, Aoi wakes up after being unconscious. Defrot has helped her stop the bleeding, but she's still weak because she already lost so much blood. The water has reached their feet. Sooner or later, they'll die by drowning if they don't get away from there. This is Aoi's first time learning that Defrot is a vampire. Defrot also admits that he was reluctant to reveal that, since he knew she wouldn't believe it anyway. He has lived for so long that he started to grow sick of this world. However, he found his relief in acting, where he could act and play out fictional lives. It's pretty much the only thing that allowed him to keep going. Hearing Defrot talk about death so lightly, Aoi gets dejected. She tells Defrot not to do that because she doesn't want him to be like Kurusu. Defrot is surprised Aoi is close with Kurusu. Aoi is about to say another thing, but then she collapses and goes unconscious again. Defrot's calm shatters in an instant as panic seizes him. With his telepathic ability, he desperately tries to contact Kurusu wherever he is, asking him to save Aoi. The message successfully reaches Kurusu. In an instant, he realizes that Aoi is in danger in Tsukushima. He then rushes to save her. However, he's stopped by Suwa. The sun is still shining outside, so stepping out would mean committing suicide. Kurusu tries to come up with a plan. He asks them to allow him to use the newly finished flying machine to take him to Tsukushima as soon as possible before he turns to ash. But since it hasn't been tested yet, there could be some errors. Takuchi can't even make sure if it's strong enough to carry a person. However, Kurusu still insists. So ultimately, Takuchi has no choice but to let Kurusu do what he wants. After making sure to cover his whole body, Kurusu takes flight using the flying machine. Elsewhere, Nakajima enters the conference room, expecting to have another meeting with the higher-ups. But strangely, although the higher-ups are physically there, the room is completely dark. Initially, Nakajima doesn't question anything. The higher-ups just criticize Nakajima's Congo Iron Soldier plan, as they always do. But then, they make odd remarks, suggesting Nakajima gives the power over the Congo Iron Soldiers to Rufus. That's when Nakajima realizes that the higher-ups in front of him are dead. Rufus then appears from behind Nakajima. It turns out he was the one manipulating Nakajima all along, flawlessly imitating the voices of the higher-ups. Rufus proceeds to arrest Nakajima and tells him to sit back and watch him become a king. Meanwhile, even though Aoi is currently unconscious, Defrot still talks to her, telling her about his past. A long time ago, Defrot had a complete family, with a mother, a father, and a little brother. Out of his whole family, he was the only one who turned into a vampire. Ironically, the person who made him a vampire refused to drink blood again after infecting him, probably out of guilt. She then let herself starve to death. As a matter of fact, she was the only vampire ever known to Defrot who died of starvation. As soon as Defrot finishes talking, Kurusu bursts onto the scene. His dramatic arrival aboard the flying machine leaves Defrot momentarily stunned. Kurusu wastes no time, rushing to Aoi's side to check on her and prepares to take her away. Actually, he also offers Defrot his help, but Defrot refuses, saying that he'll be fine as long as there are clouds in the sky. In the end, Kurusu takes Aoi to fly with him. Since that day, a few months have passed and the season has changed. With each passing day, Rufus became wilder and more audacious. First, he let the citizens get infected, and after they became feral vampires, he told his troops to kill them. Even the official military doesn't stand a chance against him, and now he claims that he's the commander of Code Zero. It also turns out that Ayame has been siding with Rufus. Every time he creates a commotion, Ayame is always there, watching from a distance. Rufus's crimes are so well coordinated that slowly, the whole of Tokyo becomes his playground. There's almost no human left in the city. At one point, he even ordered the artificial soldier to burn down Tenmanya's house. His goal is to be the ruler of the vampire world. Therefore, he won't allow anyone stronger than him to live. And that also includes anyone who is in his way. When Rufus feels like he's almost done with Tokyo, he plans to leave by boat to America to possibly commit the same crimes. So he stands beside Ayame at the port, eagerly waiting to board the ship. He boasts about what he's done with great excitement, but Ayame remains silent, her face showing no emotion. Her biggest concern is what will happen to the children once she leaves. In response to that, Rufus casually says that he'll prepare their replacements because there's nothing he cannot do. He then instructs her to board first while he bids farewell to the ambassador. A few moments later, Rufus can be seen mingling with the British higher-ups at a party in the Imperial Hotel. Suddenly, the lights dim, and the night's grand event, a theatre performance, begins. It's Salome once again. Since Rufus wasn't notified about it, he remains unfazed and just watches, thinking nothing could go wrong. But then the actor takes off his hood, revealing a face that Rufus recognizes really well. Defrot. His presence is enough to make Rufus tremble in fear. He thought he had killed Defrot, yet there he is, standing proudly on the stage, smirking at him. In the meantime, Takeuchi, Suwa and Tenmanya gather in front of Tenmanya's destroyed house that once was a sanctuary for vampires. Suwa announces that he needs to part ways with the others as he needs to go after Ayame. He believes he was the reason Ayame went away, so now he needs to clean up after what he did. He then disappears after saying goodbye. Right after that, the children come running toward Takeuchi. They ask him to play Orange with them. It seems to be some kind of a secret code. Therefore, they head for Asakusa, where their new safe place is located. In their new house, Aoi is distributing blood for the vampires. Tenmanya asks her how she's doing. Apparently, her wound has completely healed thanks to the people taking care of her there. Aoi herself was initially scared to be around vampires, but she soon realized that they were all good people. After talking to Tenmanya, Aoi excuses herself to see Kurusu. Tenmanya then goes to ask Takeuchi about the orange situation. It turns out that they're using oranges to keep track of the Congo Iron Soldier troop by marking them on the map. And now their preparation to move away is completely ready. Outside, Aoi approaches Kurusu to give him blood. However, he refuses, admitting that he's never drunk blood ever since he became a vampire. Therefore, they proceed to have a conversation instead, warming up the situation under the snow. Since Aoi still finds it hard to believe her childhood sweetheart is a vampire, she asks Kurusu to do vampire tricks. Kurusu does so, disappearing in front of her and reappearing behind her. Aoi gets excited. She asks Kurusu to do it one more time. However, Kurusu sees his friends giving a cue behind Aoi's back, so he disappears again. But this time, he doesn't reappear. This causes Aoi to look for him in confusion. Then Tenmanya approaches her, revealing that everyone has gone to the Tokyo station. Aoi's heart sinks at the news, a wave of sadness washing over her. Even if she wants to follow Kurusu, she can't, because Kurusu will live forever, unlike her who is mortal. But Tenmanya tries to persuade her, saying that vampires are not that different from humans. Since humans' time is limited, it's better for Aoi to not wait if there's something she wants to say to Kurusu. Hearing that, Aoi springs to her feet, racing toward the station in the hope of pursuing Kurusu. Unbeknownst to her, Tenmanya has ordered the shopkeeper to protect her on her journey. Elsewhere, Rufus is frantically hiding from the feral vampires. His soldiers are nowhere to be found. He's also hunted by Defrot. In a moment of hurry, after accidentally turning the feral vampire's attention to him, he teleports to the front of Tokyo Station. There, he finally meets a small group of the Congo Iron Soldiers. For a second, he thinks he's safe, but suddenly, Kurusu appears behind him. He turns back, baffled by the fact that Kurusu is still alive because he's so sure that everyone in Tenmanya's house was burned to death. Kurusu doesn't respond to that. He just focuses on cornering Rufus. But then, out of nowhere, Maida bursts onto the scene. Without a second thought, he lunges straight at Kurusu. The two end up having a sword fight, but Rufus, frozen in place, can only watch in silence, wondering why he's treated like nothing. Unable to swallow his pride any longer, he decides to go straight to the ship that will take him to America. On the ship, as he's still maintaining his haughtiness, a crew member offers to guide him to his room. Rufus just follows without having any suspicion. But little does he know that it's not an ordinary crew member. It's Defrot, who's come to end Rufus once and for all. Defrot has manipulated the ship's interior with his power to trick him, so as soon as Rufus steps into his room, he instantly plunges into the sea, the water swallowing him whole. Meanwhile, Suwa arrives at Ayame's real room. Unable to trust anyone, Ayame believes that Suwa is here to kill her. However, on the contrary, Suwa asks her to go on living with him. Ayame can't believe what she just heard, but Suwa is serious about it. The weight of his offer shatters Ayame's defenses, causing tears to stream down her face. Now Maida and Kurusu are ready to begin their final battle in front of the Tokyo station. Maida, ever since he was infected by Defrot, hasn't been acting like himself. He's only driven by his instinct and fake memories, such as the memory of him marrying Misaki, taking a walk with Misaki, and watching Misaki's Salome performance. Until today, even when he's become a vampire, he's still haunted by the spectre of Misaki. It's also Misaki who guided Maida there to the front of the station, at the place where she died. Before Kurusu and Maida start to attack each other again, Kurusu still tries to knock some sense into Maida with words. However, Maida doesn't understand a single word he utters. He can't even recognize Kurusu. In front of him, Kurusu is nothing but a mere low-level vampire who has to be eradicated. He proceeds to attack Kurusu with his sword. Kurusu attacks back, but Maida still gets the upper hand, managing to slit Kurusu's face with ease. After mustering more strength after struggling to defend himself, Kurusu successfully cuts off Maida's prosthetic hand. It might not look like much, but it triggered Maida's buried memory again. Only this time, the memory is real. His mind drifts back to the encounter he had with Nakajima a long time ago. Back then, in the midst of a battle, Maida got trapped, his comrades were gone, and his arm was lost. There was pretty much nothing he could do except keep fighting and face his death. But that was when Nakajima came to his rescue. So ever since that day, he swore to give all his life to Nakajima. Now Maida is completely lost. Deep down in his consciousness, he just wishes for Misaki to take him away with her. However, suddenly, he hears someone calling Kurusu's name. He turns back and sees Misaki. Unfortunately, that's not the real Misaki. It's Aoi, who has come to see Kurusu. Nevertheless, even if that's the case, the sight of Aoi magically returns some of Maida's humanity. Thanks to that, Maida is now able to recognize Kurusu. He then stands up to face Kurusu again. Now that Maida is back to himself to some extent, Kurusu doesn't hold back. He becomes more determined to finish this battle, showing no mercy. The two of them then clash again. It goes on intensely for so long until Maida manages to throw off Kurusu's sword, making him have the upper hand again. Yet it's not the end for Kurusu, as he still has more tricks up his sleeve. He pulls out his knives and throws them at Maida, successfully stabbing him. Then he takes Maida by surprise by shooting him with his handgun. Once Maida is distracted enough, Kurusu takes back his sword and charges at him. Eventually, Kurusu manages to stab Maida, pinning him to the ground, precisely on Misaki's holy mark. The dawn has come. Maida has fully gained his consciousness. In a few moments, the sun will shine its light onto where he lies. "You're still naive," Maida murmurs before pushing Kurusu away. Then he tells Kurusu to let this end once and for all. The sun rises more and more. Maida is about to be fully covered by its light. As death is about to come to him, he remembers the faces of his comrades and realizes that he was never alone. Finally, the sun burns Maida to death, allowing him to meet the same fate as Misaki. And now, on the ground, there are two holy marks intertwined with each other. As soon as Maida is gone, the cloud covers the sun, making the sky dark again. Aoi, who has been watching all of that, approaches Kurusu, asking if it's over. Kurusu says yes, but he still needs to fight the remaining Congo Iron soldiers. Unfortunately, he's now too drained to even stand up. Therefore, in desperation, he asks Aoi for her blood. Kurusu wants her to be the one who turns him into a real vampire. Aoi's heart shatters at his request, tears spilling down her cheeks. She doesn't want this, she just wants Kurusu to stay a human. However, nobody can turn back the time. Neither Kurusu nor Aoi can change Kurusu back into a human. Therefore, Kurusu had to make that request, because whether he is a human or a vampire, he needs to keep fighting in order to keep his humanity. Hearing that, Aoi finally decides to give her blood. As soon as Kurusu drinks the blood, his body convulses violently. He gets intense pain. His muscles tense as black smoke begins to emit from his skin. Then suddenly, he lets out a blood-curdling scream, which echoes through the entire city of Tokyo. It can also be heard by his comrades who are waiting to depart on the train. With Kurusu's voice, they can feel something is changing, and it gives them hope. The train carrying Takeuchi along with the other vampire refugees finally depart. So is the ship carrying Suwa and Ayame. Tenmanya and the shopkeeper choose to stay behind, ready to rebuild their new lives. Meanwhile, Kurusu, now regaining his stability, stands tall once more. He then moves forward to slay the remaining Congo Iron soldiers in front of him, as Aoi watches behind him, crying at the realization that she can't see Kurusu grow old with her. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.